I want to break free. I want to break free.
Hi, this is Freedom from Behind Bars with me, Karen Allen. And this is part 2 of a 5-part series that I'm doing really to enlighten and to empower you with just some ideas that will hopefully help to give you a fresh perspective on your current situation, or to help you make a slight shift in your thinking so that you can be free to do and to be everything that you desire to do and be. Hopefully by the end of these sessions you would have picked up at least 1 or 2 things that you can implement in your life that will help you to live a more fulfilled life. That's my hope, that's my prayer, that's my goal. I don't know if you've ever watched the series Prison Break. Gosh, this was years ago now that I remember watching it. I'm not sure if they even still show it on TV, or probably on catch-up telly or box TV. You know how it goes. Anyway, I do remember that it was about these 2 brothers in particular, and one was in jail, and one, his whole purpose was to get his brother out of jail, and he was prepared to do whatever it took to get his brother out of jail. And the thing that stood out to me in watching, and I only watched a couple of series, but the thing that stood out to me was just the determination and the conviction and the strategic planning that both brothers were prepared to do to ensure that the one brother who was in jail got free from jail. And when I think about this series, really, in order to be free from anything, it's going to take commitment, it's going to take planning, it's going to take consistency, it's going to take a determination, it's going to take a will. There's no freedom from anything that's going to happen just by chance. If you're going to be free from behind the bars that have kept you bound in your mind, that have kept you mentally incarcerated, if you're going to be free, then it's going to take you putting in some concerted effort in order to experience that freedom. So yesterday, in our last session, I briefly talked about the story of Joseph, just gave you a really quick overview. And today I want to home in on a specific part of that story. But before I do, I just want to give you a definition, because I like to look at definitions when I'm dealing with particular words. And because we're dealing with bars and being free from behind bars, I looked up the word bar just to put some of this in context. And there were 3 definitions that stood out to me. The first one was that a bar is something that is put in front of a door or a window so that people cannot go in or get out. Secondly, it is something that is put in a road or a path so that people cannot get by. And then thirdly, it is something used to prevent or to forbid someone from doing something. So the word bars in this context is something that is used that stops you, or that stops us from doing something, from getting out of something, from going into something, from getting by something, or from going around something. And I thought that was really interesting, because there are things in our minds, there are experiences that we have had that have caused us to be behind bars. Some of us who really want to get into loving long-term relationships, and we can't because we're behind bars. There are some of us who want to start businesses, who want to do charitable work or even philanthropic work, and we can't because we're behind bars. There are some of us who want to get out of painful situations, who want to stop being bound in or stuck in situations that we know are destructive, but we can't because we're behind bars. So I'm going to use the word BARS, B.A.R.S, as an acronym to talk about 4 things, 4 experiences that can cause us to be stuck, or that can cause us to feel as though we can't get out of a situation, or that can cause us to feel as though we can't get by. These 4 things can happen to anyone at any time. And it's so important that we recognize these things so that we can be free from these things, so that they don't stop us from being and doing everything that we were created to be and do. So the first one is B, betrayed. Can you imagine how Joseph must have felt when his brothers, who he loved and trusted and looked up to, he was the 11th of 12 brothers, and his younger brother was not involved in this scenario. So his older 10 brothers took him, deceived him, brought him to a situation where they stripped him of his dignity and then threw him in a pit. He must have felt so betrayed by his brothers, and to be betrayed means to feel hurt by someone you trusted, or to feel disloyal, to feel as though the person's been disloyal to you, or that they've breached your confidence in some way. And the feeling of betrayal can be so painful. And, many of us can relate to that, to having trusted someone, to having believed in someone, to having looked up to someone, and they just betrayed our trust. And it must have been such a painful situation for Joseph to know that his brothers were above a pit, laughing. He could hear them laughing at him, taking the mick out of him, and he was in this situation where he found himself stuck because they betrayed him. The second thing Joseph must have felt was abandoned. He must have felt so deserted by the people who he loved the most. To be abandoned is to be left by someone who should have protected you or should have helped you in a situation. And there are many people who are free physically, but because they've been abandoned, they are imprisoned mentally, because they can't move from that situation. They can't move their mind from, how could that person leave me like this? How could that person who was supposed to protect me, who was supposed to help me, how could they abandon me and just leave me, desert me like this? And this is how Joseph must have felt in that pit at that time. He must have felt so abandoned by his brothers. How can you do this to me? I'm your little brother. Many of us can relate to that. And thirdly, he must have felt so rejected. And the feeling of rejection can be so painful and so damaging, because his brothers, in throwing him in the pit, were saying, you are not accepted by us. We do not love you. We are not concerned about you. You are inadequate. You are unacceptable. As a matter of fact, you're just wrong. And because you're wrong, we reject you. Oftentimes when things go wrong and people go wrong, we do reject them. And there are a lot of us who have been rejected, and those who have been rejected, and those feelings of rejection have caused us to be mentally imprisoned, behind bars, stuck behind those bars. And fourthly, Joseph must have felt so sad. Sad, I looked up the word sad, and it's feelings that are associated with grief or unhappiness, to be depressed, to be cast down, to be sorrowful. And can you imagine how sad he must have felt, how distressing and depressing it must have been for him to know, look who I was. My dad's favourite, getting what I need, getting the love and care from my parents at least, and now I'm in a pit. It must have been devastated for him. And these 4 things we can all relate to at some point in our lives. The feeling of being betrayed or abandoned or rejected, or just feeling sad because things didn't work out the way we planned. And these things can keep us from going in to our promise, or from coming out of the situation that we're in. It can keep us so stuck that we cannot get past it. Remember the definition I gave earlier. A bar is something put in a road or a path so you cannot get by. And these things can prevent us from doing the thing that we were created to do. Remember I said in the first session that Joseph was set aside for a specific purpose. But if he didn't free himself from these feelings of betrayal, the feeling of being abandoned, the feeling of being rejected, the feeling of being sad, then he would have been stuck behind those bars, those mental bars that had him in that pit. As a result of being in that pit, I should say, he would have been stuck there for the rest of his life. He had to free himself from the effects of betrayal, from the effects of abandonment, from the effects of rejection, from the effects of sadness, so that he could be the person that he was destined to be. And I want to encourage you that you may have been betrayed, you may have been abandoned, you may have been rejected, and still have those feelings, those painful feelings. And in your mind, you're like, I can't get through this. But you can. You can get over this. You can get around this. You can get through this. The question is how? How do you? And in the next couple of sessions, I'm going to be just giving you some tips. You know, it's by no means going to be exhaustive. It's just going to be some ideas that you can implement to help you get over, get through, get around the feelings of betrayal, get over, through, and around the feelings of abandonment, get over, through, and around the feelings of rejection. Get over, through, and around the feelings, and not only the feelings, but the effects, the after effects of these 4 things. Because ultimately your goal, or my goal in these sessions, is to help you to be free from behind those bars. Till next time, remember, freedom is a choice. Choose wisely. Bye for now.
I've got to break free.